I took a break from doing Simpsons games, but there's so many of them. So many Simpsons games, I can't escape them. And we gotta talk about all of them. But for now, we're gonna get into Bart's Nightmare on the Sega Genesis. Let's get into it. The Simpsons Bart's Nightmare on the Sega Genesis, the slightly more tolerable port than the SNES version. How many times have we got to talk about The Simpsons on this program? Well, there is a plethora of Simpson games out there that have been released throughout the years, so we're going to cover them one by one. But when are we going to get to one of the good ones? Well, not today, but we got to talk about it anyway. Bart's Nightmare is an interesting concept, however, it didn't pan out into very enjoyable gameplay. It's not the worst game, and I don't think it deserves the beating that it gets from other video game reviewers, but there are many insufferable aspects of this game that impede it from being good. Now, being that the game is called Bart's Nightmare, you would think it's something like a Treehouse of Horror love letter. Not really, this is its own unique endeavor. The premise is centered around Bart falling asleep while doing homework, and he has a nightmare that the fan turns on and blows all the papers out the window. So the entire game takes place in Bart's mind, and the object is to collect each page of paper of Bart's homework assignment. And how many pages of Bart's homework assignment you gather before he wakes up will determine the grade you get at the end of the game. Playing throughout the fantasy levels envisioned in Bart's dream is what I find interesting in that concept, not the homework part. You'll spend the majority of the game in the street wandering around like an idiot until a piece of paper shows up. Now, there is a greater complexity than there appears to be on this part of the game concerning the enemies and the different items that you pick up, but we'll be here all day if I get into all of that. Not that any of it matters because it doesn't make this part of the game interesting. You just want a piece of paper to show up so you can hurry up and jump on it and get to something else. The most important thing to me about the street is a quicker way to make the piece of paper appear. You need watermelon seeds, but how do you get them? You gotta jump over these mailboxes until they give them to you. Then you gotta walk in the street, but make sure you're walking on the side of the street where the bus has already passed, otherwise you're gonna get run over. Dodge enemies, and when the bus passes by, go to the other side of the street that he just passed on. Do this until this walking TV set shows up. Spit the seeds at him. Once you destroy them, a piece of paper should appear shortly after. The pieces of paper are easier to come by early on in the game, but after the 4th page that you collect, they become more scarce, so you're going to want to use that trick I just showed you. And your HUD needs to have Z's to stay in the game, otherwise you wake up. But gathering Z's to stay in the game is also a chore. You have to use your bubble gum. You blow a bubble and touch the Z's that are floating around in the air while paying attention to your surroundings so that you don't get hit by an enemy. Make sure you touch only the blue Z's, the red Z's pop your bubble. You can expand your life meter by getting the skateboard, but how do you get the skateboard? You need to find the basketball. You'll hear it before it comes on the screen. Once you see it, make sure to jump over it. Hop on the skateboard and stay on it for as long as you can. Avoid the cracks in the sidewalk and in the street. Avoid the manhole covers, and be cautious about what's behind the trees because they obstruct your view and anything could be hiding behind them. The longer you stay riding on the skateboard, the longer your life meter will get and it'll fill up with Z's. Now let's talk about the mini games, which you get into by jumping on the pieces of paper. You'll come up to 2 different doors, often of 2 different colors. If you don't pick a side, the computer will pick it for you. There's Itchy and Scratchy. This one is easy if you know what to do. I recommend grabbing the mallet. Don't bother with any other weapon. Stay on the top and keep whacking that mallet until your enemies are gone, and then move it when the arrow shows up. Here's Bartman, which is a very average shooter, but I think it's the best of the whole bunch. This one seems to be a nod to any Simpsons fan out there, as quite a few characters from the show make an appearance in this little mini game. There's Bartzilla. It's divided into two segments. First, you're playing as Giant Bartzilla, and all you gotta do is try to survive to the end of this stage. The strategy in this is to destroy all the enemies before they drain your health, which has no HUD to determine how much health you have. When you reach the end, allow the shrink ray to zap you so you can progress to the next part of this stage. In this part, the only objective is to get to the top to Homer Kong. Watch out for the stuff that's being dropped out of the windows, but it's not easy because there isn't enough foresight for some of the stuff that's coming down. Avoid Marge Mothra if you can, and make it to Homer. Shock him to bring him down to size. Here's a bloodstream level where you inflate enemies and blow them up, kind of like in Dig Dug. The object here is to touch as many Smilin' Joe Fission characters as you can to make that paper fall. Once the page starts to descend, grab it and you're done. Now there's also this Indiana Jones inspired Temple of Maggie stage. I hate this one. Now there's one thing that stands out to me about this particular game on the Sega Genesis is that you don't have use of the whip. I know you have use of the whip on the Super Nintendo, but I don't know what happened here. But I was sure that the whip was present in the Sega Genesis version, so after I stopped video capturing for this review to take a break from this game, it was bothering me. I was sure you could use the whip on the Sega Genesis version. So later, off camera, I found out I was right. You could use the whip, but I just forgot how to do it. You have to hold the A button and then push which direction on the directional pad you want to whip. But anyway, even when I was a kid, I can only beat Act 1 of the stage. I couldn't beat Act 2. Regardless, this is still the hardest of all the mini games, and it's the only one I haven't beaten. This blue devil guy who pokes you with his pitchfork really annoys me because sometimes he makes you jump on a column that has a flame on it. You gotta also watch out for Maggie's pacifier. In conclusion, Bart's Nightmare aesthetic does its fan service justice, but the gameplay is very mediocre. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. This game belongs in any diehard Simpsons fan collection, but don't hold it to the standard of the arcade beat-em-up by Konami. That was a much better game. That about wraps it up for this installment of the Straight Edge Game Room. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, reference my video catalog for past episodes, and leave a comment down below.